Welcome to the Emotional Balance Sheet, the go-to podcast for parents with multiple kids, especially those with twins, triplets, or more, who are navigating the maze of modern family life and personal finance. Whether you're overwhelmed by education or retirement planning, parenting dilemmas, career transitions, or trying to define your purpose and plan, we're here to guide you with empathy, encouragement, and expertise. Hosted by Paul Fenner, founder of Tama Capital, a certified financial planner and parent to 4 kids, including a set of triplets. Our podcast is your ally in the quest for financial peace of mind, proving that money matters, but family comes first. Subscribe now and join our community of empowered parents at tamacapital.com. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Tama may retain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast.
What does comprehensive financial planning even mean? At Tama Capital, it means a family office where lifestyle planning such as retirement, college, portfolio management, and tax prep and planning are all under one umbrella. But it goes beyond numbers. We focus as much on the emotional side of financial planning as we do on the financial side. We get you. We understand your challenges of building a family, business or career, and a healthy life. We are devoted to wealth planning for families like yours because we are you. Learn how our family can help your family by visiting tamacapital.com. Have you ever wondered if standardized tests like the SAT or ACT are still relevant, especially when colleges are now offering test-optional admissions? The debate around standardized testing has become more nuanced than ever. Many students and parents are grappling with the question, is it still necessary to take the SAT or ACT? To shed some light on this topic, I wanted to speak with Dr. Shaan Patel. Shaan is the founder and CEO of Prep Expert, a leading text preparation company. Shaan's expertise offers invaluable insights into why standardized tests still matter, even in a test-optional era. Shaan shares insights into his journey from an aspiring physician to a successful entrepreneur. Drawing from his experience on conquering standardized tests and securing scholarships, he highlights the pivotal role of motivation and resilience in achieving academic and professional objectives. From navigating the pressures of Shark Tank, which we dive into in detail, to finding harmony between a career in medicine and entrepreneurship, Dr. Patel's story offers practical advice for families and students, offering valuable lessons in pursuing passions and seizing opportunities. Please enjoy my conversation with Dr. Shaan Patel. Well, Shaan, welcome to the Emotional Balance Sheet podcast. I'm excited to have a conversation with you today.
Hey, Paul, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we've had, I think it must be like the spring season where I've had previous guests on talking about college planning, college prep, and it was just kind of serendipitous that the two of us connected to talk about your firm, Test Prep, and how you work with students and parents, because I'm interested in both. I'm being a parent myself, and not only working with families and kids as well, as far as ACT and SAT prep. So one of the things that came out of my previous conversations was this test optional for SAT and ACT. And obviously during COVID, test optional became a really big thing. But now we're seeing that more schools are coming back to requiring tests. And I'd like to get your insight on that. But I think from what I've seen as far as the data, the explosion of applications for schools has gone off the charts. And so obviously, if you're choosing not to take an ACT or an SAT score, that actually might be a deterrent to help you get into a school. So let me kind of flip the script back over to you and ask your thoughts about that, and then we'll get into how you founded your company, and then one of your big breakthroughs, which was Shark Tank, which we'll talk about probably quite a bit.
Yeah. No, this is a great question to kick things off. And just for context for the audience, my name's Shaan Patel. I'm the founder and CEO of Prep Expert. We're a test preparation company. We help students and parents with online SAT and ACT courses to raise their test scores. So, to answer your question regarding test optional college admissions, there's been a lot of confusion over the past 5 years on should my kid take the test, should they not take the test, etc. I would say there's really three major reasons that your student should take the SAT, ACT, or even both exams. The first reason is even if you're only applying to test optional colleges, all of the data is showing that students with test scores are getting accepted at higher rates. At many universities, it's 2 to 3 times higher. And we're talking top universities like Emory, Georgetown, USC, etc. And so, although colleges are saying they're test optional, to your point, they're getting tens of thousands, sometimes over 100,000 applications. So a lot of times they do still consider those test scores in admissions. The second reason you should still take the tests is scholarships. So a lot of people kind of equate SAT and ACT to college admissions, but they forget these are super important tests in order to be awarded merit-based scholarships. So both from the colleges themselves, as well as from private companies, local scholarships in your area, etc. And there's over $7 billion in merit-based scholarships awarded annually. So if your student doesn't have a test score, they'll likely won't have an opportunity to reduce or even eliminate their college costs. I got $500,000 in scholarships myself. We've helped students get over $1 million, $250,000, 100,000. I mean, it really, really helps to get merit-based scholarships. And the third reason is what you kind of mentioned, which is there's a huge trend now among colleges, specifically this year in 2024, bringing back test scores. So just a couple of weeks ago, Harvard announced that they're requiring tests, Yale, MIT, Dartmouth, Brown, but it's not just top colleges. It's also places like University of Texas at Austin. It's Georgia public universities. So I would be really careful thinking that your college is test optional and all of a sudden they change their policy right before your student's about to apply and you're scrambling to take the tests. And so, the reason that so many colleges are bringing back the test scores is because what you said, they're getting so many applications. It's very hard to be able to decipher who to let in, who not to let in. On top of that, there's been so much grade inflation in the schools that actually now 47% of all high school seniors graduate with an A average. I know when you went to school, when I went to school, A was
It wasn't that
exceptional.
way.
Yeah, now A is average. So, if half of all students have a 4.0 GPA, how do you really differentiate and decide who to let into your college or university when you have a limited number of spots?
That's a really interesting point. I think there's still confusion around what test to take. Do you take the SAT or do you take the ACT? Do you have any insights behind like how to answer that question from the student perspective or from a parenting perspective that's trying to provide some guidance on, with your kids on that?
Yeah. So, both exams are accepted by colleges and scholarships equally. So there's not one advantage. Both exams test roughly the same material. It's reading, mathematics, English grammar, and ACT has science, SAT doesn't. However, one of the reasons that I'm recommending that parents and students really consider the SAT now more is because this new digital SAT that just got released in 2024, I believe is the most student-friendly version of a college admissions test ever created. And I say that because for the first time ever, the test is under 100 questions. So it's only 98 questions. When you and I took it, it was 150 to 200 questions, the old paper-based SAT. It was a 3 hour to 3.5 hour exam previously.
It was brutal.
Yeah, now it's just 2 hours and 14 minutes. And, you used to only have on the ACT, I think you only have 49 seconds per question. On this new digital SAT, you have 1 minute and 22 seconds per question on average. There's a lot of benefits to the math section, got rid of you can use calculators on all questions now. You used to not be able to do that. The reading passages are a lot shorter. There's no more obscure vocabulary. So parents and students are going to love this new version of the digital SAT. And we're already seeing great results, great feedback about it. On top of that, the digital SAT will help your student get prepared for the digital PSAT, which is so important, the preliminary SAT for national merit scholarships, another big scholarship avenue that we were talking about, the importance of reducing student debt just a few minutes earlier.
So one of the things I find interesting about your firm and when you started was your classes, for the most part, are live. They're not self-paced. Can you explain like why you ended up going that direction versus, I know going through like my last like CFP or CFA classes or enrolled agent classes, everything was self-paced versus like having somebody live teach you online. What was the determining factor of going live versus self-paced?
Yeah, so great question. At Prep Expert, almost all of our SAT courses and ACT courses are taught live online by 99th percentile instructors who have all scored in the top 1% of the test. It would have been a lot easier for us to simply have a video course and expect students to watch on their own, go through all the content, do all the practice exams, do all the homework. And that works for some students, but usually that's going to be the top 1% or top 5% of students who are highly self-motivated, who are very disciplined. What works best in our experience for most high school students, teenagers, is actually working with experts and instructors who can answer all of their questions, teach them the content in a methodical and structured format. And we find that the best score results come that way. And that's why we offer 200-point score guarantees on our 6-week flagship SAT courses and our 4-point score improvement guarantee on our ACT courses. That's really the reason, is because we think it's better for the student. These days we find that most high school students have less and less discipline and self-control. It's easier to,
a lot of distractions out there these days.
Scroll TikTok than watch an SAT video course, right? Obviously, I know that most of the competitors offer video courses, and the reason they do that is it's easier to scale. It's less of a headache operationally to manage, real instructors and real classes and all that. And so we take the hard route, but we get better results for our students, and I think it's the right thing to do.
So how did you end up starting your company? How did you start Prep Expert? And this is where we'll start to get into a little bit about your background, which I think is fascinating as we kind of build up, because there's another question within there. But the one thing I've learned about being a podcast host over the last 3.5 years now is don't ask 2 questions at the same time. Just stick with one.
No, great question again. So I never envisioned myself, being the owner of a test prep company. It really came out of my own experience. So I went to high school in Las Vegas, Nevada, which, is, if you know anything about Vegas, it's not known for its excellent education system. So I went to public schools there, 40% high school dropout rate. And I was not a very good standardized test taker. A lot of people think that I'm some genius, but no, I'm like many of the students or parents with students. I was a good student. I got straight A's, but I was not a very good standardized test taker. I had a lot of test anxiety. And actually on the first SAT I ever took, I barely got above average. And so I spent hundreds of hours in the library studying for the SAT, eventually was able to raise my score to a perfect score. So the perfect SAT score is something that only 0.02% of all students achieve. And it completely changed my life. I got into some of the nation's top universities. I got $500,000 in scholarships, got a ton of academic awards. And so when I got to college, I wanted to help other students improve their test scores the way that I did to improve their own lives. And so actually, I originally just wanted to publish an SAT prep book. But this was, 14, 15 years ago. And at that time, you had to go through a major publisher. Self-publishing wasn't as big at the time. I'm sure it was around, but So it was really going through major publishers. So I pitched my book proposal out to 100 literary agents and publishers. Every single one said, no, you don't have a platform. The SAT prep market's too competitive. And so I took all that curriculum I had written for the book and I taught my first 6-week course. And in that first 6-week course that I ever taught, my students had an average score improvement of 376 points, which is equivalent of taking a student from the 50th percentile and putting them in the 90th percentile, completely opening up their college and scholarship doors and opportunities. So, of course, I had parents who wanted more courses. So I began training other instructors to teach my curriculum. And the rest is history. Over the past 14 years, we've helped over 100,000 students at Prep Expert improve their SAT and ACT scores, get into the nation's top universities, and win over $100 million in college scholarships. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
So, because I know your backstory a little bit, there was another love of yours that you were initially going to school for, and we should probably call that out, is that you're a medical doctor. Like you went through med school. And so my question is, if you can give us a little backdrop on that part of the story, but I think more interesting to me and hopefully our audience is, how did you end up choosing between going the medical route versus going the entrepreneurial route?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. So I am a medical doctor. I'm actually still a practicing dermatologist, but I only do teledermatology part-time. So I spend most of my time working on the business as an entrepreneur. So just to give a backstory on that, it actually ties in quite well, because the reason that I studied, people are like, well, why did you study so much for the SAT when you're in high school? The reason was I was trying to get into competitive medical programs because I wanted to be a doctor. That was the dream. And those required high SAT scores, the ones that I was looking at. And so that's why, what I tell students in our courses at Prep Expert is identify your why as to why you want a high SAT or ACT score, because no one wants a high score just to have a high score. My why was to get into a competitive medical program. Your why might be you want to get into Harvard, or you want to get, 100,000 in scholarships, but identify that larger purpose, because that'll bring internal motivation. And that's a lot more effective than external motivation from your parents saying, oh, you got to study for this test. But if you don't know why or what your motivation is, it's really hard. So, ultimately, I ended up getting into a very competitive medical program at the University of Southern California. I got a full ride scholarship to go there, so I didn't have to pay a dime for tuition, housing, books, or anything like that. And, this company, I started literally right before I was going to start medical school, and it started to scale up. And so this company was just kind of scaling up. And I was in med school. And, then I took a 2-year leave of absence to do business school at Yale, actually, to learn how to scale the company further.
When I heard that on reading your bio, I was like, that was blown away. I was like,
yeah, it's been a quite a journey over the last 15 years, because it's like I was in business school at Yale. Learning how to grow the company, because I was like, man, it's really growing, and med school was not giving me enough time to scale it. So I was like, I'll do business school. And then at the same time, while I was in business school, I went and I auditioned for Shark Tank, because Yale's pretty close to New York City, where they were doing auditions.
yeah.
And I ended up getting on the show. And, we can go into all of that. But on top of that, I then finished residency as a dermatologist, and now I still do teledermatology. And living my dream life as both a doctor and an entrepreneur. But I'm sure your next question is going to be on Shark Tank, so I'll wait to talk about it.
No, actually, I want to pivot back to something you said, which I think is fascinating, because I struggle with this all the time as a financial advisor and running a family office, where your point was, when you talk to students and or parents about, well, what's your why? Like, why do you want a higher test score? Is it to get into a certain college, a certain field? And that's the one area of financial planning that I think is lost on most people, because I think I'd say a large portion of the population has this stereotype of who they think a financial advisor is and what they do. And one of the things that I try to do almost every day is to break down those stereotypes where I want to first focus on what is your purpose? What is your supporting objectives? Because what I've found in doing this over the years and working with enough families is that if you don't know that, you there's no path, there's no guidepost to get you to where you want to go. Like just making money is one thing. You could beat the market all day long, but still have a failing wealth management plan. So I think
Yeah.
that was very interesting. Your point there about having this conversation with students first about their why.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I find that that's one of the reasons actually I think that we do get students better results is because we get them self-motivated, internally motivated right at the beginning of our courses so that they have the motivation, the discipline to, go through the content, go through the practice tests, not get discouraged, come back from, failures or and have the resilience. But as it relates to financial planning and wealth management, I think it's 100% relevant. I remember my father-in-law once told me his financial advisor asked him, well, why do you want to make a lot of money? Or, and no one had ever asked him that before.
Right.
Which is like, if you sit back and think about it, like, is it for you want more freedom, you want more time, you want material things, whatever it may be, but figure that out. Because if you don't, it's just, numbers in an account and what does it really mean? So I think it's really, really applicable to the world of financial planning and wealth management as well.
Yeah, and thus, like, I think you just hit the nail on the head because this is why it's called the emotional balance sheet. I think people that know me, and even I know people that listen to the show who know me, they know that it's not just about numbers. We're not going to talk about your retirement plan this week or taxes next week. Like, I'm working with mainly parents, whether you have twins or triplets like I do, or a singleton or three kids, it doesn't matter. Like we're all struggling trying to find harmony between all these competing priorities, whether it's helping our kids through school, managing all the extracurricular activities, managing our own career. God help us if we have time to, spend with our spouses and then time to think about ourselves and what we want to do. So do you think that that's a differentiating factor between you and these other test prep companies that are out there? Because I'll just use one in particular that I used was Kaplan when I was going through like the CFA program. Like no one was asking me like what my why was, like why I wanted to get a CFA and or CFP and go through the rigors of all those tests.
Yeah, I think that's a huge differentiator because what I like to say about our prep programs at Prep Expert is we go from test prep to life prep. And what I mean by that is we don't just teach you the skills to do well on the tests, but we teach you skills to do well in life, meaning through our programs, we want to help students identify their whys, identify their goals, become more self-motivated, learn time management, learn delayed gratification, teach them how to study effectively for other aspects of their academics and, later on in college. These are all super important skills, life skills that many students don't learn in traditional school. So we love to help students with that. And, if we can be, and I love when I see my students become, dermatologists or doctors, or, I have students now who work at NVIDIA as tech engineers and started their own consulting firms. So I'm really trying to help students become successful, not just on one test, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an important test, of course, and we want that to that's our main goal, but our side goals are, how can we help the student become successful for the rest of their lives?
That's interesting. That's got to be extremely rewarding. So do you keep in contact with kids that come through your program on some kind of regular basis, or like the other teachers that are part of the platform?
Yeah, because like you said, it is a live online courses where students learn from, real teachers. They end up developing like relationships by email in terms of like, here's what my score was, here's what colleges I got into, here's what scholarships I got into. And then, now that we've been around for 14 years, it's like, here's what career I'm doing now. So they really develop that kind of personal relationship. And we, encourage our students to continue to update us throughout the rest of their lives. Yeah.
One of the things that I want to come back to on this is when you talk about like you're not just building test skills, you're building life skills as well. I think one of the subjects that a lot of us parents are facing right now is helping to develop good study habits within our kids because you talk about things that aren't taught in school besides financial planning. Study skills are another one. And having, my triplets that are in seventh grade right now and my plus one that's in sixth grade, that's a real struggle. So is there some component of what you do incorporate like developing good study habits?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's exactly what we teach in our courses that I think is totally different than any other test prep course. So at Prep Expert, we actually teach what are called Prep Expert general strategies, quote unquote, which mean those are strategies that are generally applicable to all aspects of your academic studying. So it's things like, something as simple as turning off the technology and putting your phone in a separate room, the importance of physical exercise and how it impacts your neurons in your brain to memorize more effectively. These are things you're probably not going to see at a Kaplan or Princeton review, but I
No.
think it's super important. And that's why we always get reviews from students. Like, I didn't just learn about the SAT or the ACT. I learned how to take academics more seriously. I learned how to study more effectively. Because the funny thing about school, to your point, is, every teacher from middle school to high school expects you to study for exams, but no one ever really teaches you how to study. So we
Right.
teach things like the Pomodoro technique, all these different time management methods to help students develop, a real effective strategy towards studying, because that's really what you need.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I wish the school systems would get on board with having courses designed for that as really starting in middle school, because I feel like we're already starting to miss the boat a lot with once they get to high school. And I know, and maybe I'm biased on this, Shaan, because like I remember going to school and barely having to study and getting all A's. And then once I hit college, I was in no man's land. And it took, a year and a half to really figure that out. And it was extremely challenging. And so anything that we can do to help kids understand that now, I think will be beneficial, for a lifetime. Um, so now let's pivot into Shark Tank, because this is I'm sure you get these some maybe these you get these questions often, but maybe I'll put a different twist on them to make it to maybe go a different angle. But um, walk us through. Well, let me ask this question first. Was it as intense? Because I watched your show now twice. And boy, like I was sweating bullets, like just watching you go through that. Is it as intense as it appears to be on TV in real life?
The short answer to your question is yes, and I'll give you the long answer. So, just as a synopsis for everyone, I went on Shark Tank to pitch the company Prep
And
Expert.
by the way, we'll link to um, Prep Expert, and you've got the video on that. So we'll put that in our show notes and direct people to that. It's a great watch, and it's really incredible how you ended up getting through.
Yeah. So, I went on there asking, I think, $250,000 for 10% equity.
10%, yeah.
Company. And I was super overconfident walking in because I thought, I have a great company. We're doubling in revenue every year. Why would a shark not give me an offer? And I thought I was going to get multiple offers, etc. And then kind of reality smacked me in the face as soon as I got in there, which is every shark rejected me initially. They basically all they loved the business, but they hated the fact that I was also a doctor. Or I was
Yeah.
a doctor. I think I was in medical school or business school at the time. So I was still like in training. And so none of them thought that I would be dedicated enough to grow the business, etc. At the last moment, Mark Cuban comes in, he saves the day. We make a $250,000 investment for 20% equity, which I was okay with because I actually thought that was going to be my limit anyway. And so he got me right at the limit, which, it ended up working out. He's been an amazing investor advocate and partner for the company. But to answer your question, yes, I was sweating bullets. And if you watch the episode on prepexpert.com, you'll see that I'm sweating bullets at the end of it. And the reason for that is because on TV, you see like 10 or 15-minute clip of the pitch, but I was up there for an hour and a half, fielding questions from all these, multimillionaire, billionaire folks. And they're asking me tough questions, very little water. And so I'm definitely sweating bullets by the end of it. But, it all ended up working out great for me. We went through the due diligence process, the deal closed with Mark Cuban. He's been just tremendous. But yeah, it's really been a dream come, and I proved all the sharks wrong. I'm a doctor and I'm an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. Made it work. And I couldn't be happier today.
I think that Shaan is one of the most fascinating pieces of your story. From the Shark Tank experience on, is the fact that, and I saw this like, and I could relate to where they were coming from. Like, Shaan, how can you do both? Like, this is like medical school. Like, this is like Yale, business school. And then you're trying to do this as well. But I think the fact that you were able to pull it off, you were able to do that. And when I was watching that, it kind of got me emotional because I was thinking back to my background and how I came from a corporate finance operations background. And I was told multiple times, like, you'll never be able to start your firm, or you'll never be able to manage your firm the way that you want to and be completely independent and not part of a bigger company. And, now here I am 13 and a half years later and fully sustainable and working with, close to 60 different families. It's been completely amazing and rewarding. And I'm sure you have very similar things, but I felt like this emotional connection, like watching you go through that. And then like knowing here you are like years later, holding all those degrees, even though one is from, or actually do you have two from USC or just one?
Yeah, so I did both my bachelor's and my medical degree
Yeah.
there, and then an MBA at Yale. But no,
So for
go ahead.
just to interrupt, so for the listening audience that can't see us, most people know I'm a Notre Damer, and so behind me on my bookcase or shelf is my Notre Dame paraphernalia. So I'm not sure if you caught on to that, Shaan, but
Okay. No, I just noticed it now, but I see. So we're technically rivals.
yeah, but it's all right.
It's okay. No, we'll come together for the podcast. No, so to your point though, I think it's super important for anyone here listening, whether you're an entrepreneur or want to become an entrepreneur, or just, become more successful in your own career, that what you said specifically is super important, which is you need to have resilience, because people are going to tell you it's not going to work. People are going to tell you you're going to be a failure. This idea is not going to work. And I think that's what resonated so much with my particular Shark Tank episode with folks, because I have people tell me all the time, I have an idea and people tell me it fails. And I already I already told you I had 100 literary agents and publishers who were experts who told me my SAT prep book wasn't going to work. And I forgot to bring it back around, which is McGraw-Hill, the world's largest education publisher, saw what I was doing with Prep Expert a year later. They came back. They had initially rejected my book proposal. They said, well, now you've built out courses and a curriculum, so we'll give you the book deal. So I ended up doing the book. It sold 50,000 copies. It went number one on Amazon for SAT prep. And so, what I would advise people that go through failure or go through rejections is never give up, keep pivoting, keep trying different things, because you never know when your break will come. But if you stop trying, you'll never succeed. So that's the most important aspect, I think, of becoming successful, is just having the resilience to go through from failure to failure, and eventually you'll hit your successes.
So to pivot back to the show, to give us a little more inside information on how it works, because you're the first person I've talked to that's ever been on the show before.
Yeah.
And one of my questions was obviously the clip that they give you is 10 to 15 minutes, but obviously there's a whole lot more time involved in that. So I think you had mentioned you were up there for what, an hour and a half?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was up there for an hour and a half. There's a lot of conversation that actually happens that I think, people like you, Paul, would be interested in because it's more business related, but it
Yeah.
doesn't make great
I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that place.
Yeah, yeah, because it's more, but it doesn't make for great TV. So obviously, they're going to pick the most dramatic, the most
Yeah.
interesting segments from that hour and a half. But you know, I would say that one, the Sharks have a lot of business acumen. I was surprised how, Kevin O'Leary right away knew the numbers for Kaplan and Princeton reviews. I think he knew their revenue and their cost per acquisitions. And, I would say that, yeah, they really knew their stuff, and it's very real, I would say too, in that it's not like the director was yelling "cut" at any moment, or saying like "re-say that" or any of that happened. It was completely,
Like free
full hour
flowing.
and a half pitch, yeah, and then they just, which is what's the beauty of Shark Tank, I think, is it is very real. The investment for me actually happened. I will say one of the things that does happen is that many times you'll make a handshake deal on Shark Tank. And then there is a long due diligence process that happens,
That was going to
which
be my next question. Is like,
yeah, which ends up in I think like I've heard like 40 to 50% of the deals actually go
go
through.
through.
So I'm kind of, you know, very grateful that I'm in that kind of minority. Not only 50% of people even make a handshake deal on the show, and then only, 40% of those will actually the investment goes through after due diligence.
Yeah, you're getting down to some small numbers
Yeah.
from beginning to end. So what was it like working with Mark? I mean, he's such a charismatic guy. So what was it like working with him? And do you still work with him?
Yeah. Yeah. So Mark invests, I mean, my show went on in 2016. So it's been basically over 8 years now that Mark Cuban's been invested in my company. And I will say that it's having the best shark, in my opinion, because not only do you get access to Mark Cuban directly, but you get access to his whole Mark Cuban company's team. So you get a lot of support. They've helped me from everything from accounting to infrastructure to business partnerships to licensing deals over the years. I can email Mark at any time and he always responds like within 10 minutes.
I've heard
And
that about him. Like he responds to email.
yeah, so I've heard he does 800 to 1,000 emails a day, but he doesn't take any meetings, unless it's a really, really important meeting, which I think is understandable when you have hundreds of investments. If he was in
Yeah.
meetings, he'd be in meetings all day. And so, over the years, we've co-invested in other education companies together. We've co-hosted entrepreneurship panels together. We just did one for the Obama Foundation maybe a month back now. We've co-written books together. We wrote a book called Kids Startup, for, helping inspire kids to become entrepreneurs themselves. So it's been a really, really amazing journey over the years. You know, I I think it's the dream come true, as I keep saying, because like how many people get to make a deal with Mark Cuban, who's Mark's like, let's write this book together, let's do this entrepreneurship panel together, and he approaches me often with these opportunities, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's what I think most people probably don't know, which is really insightful having this conversation with you is like maybe people think that it just stops at that initial investment with your business, but it sounds like you've developed so much more with him, post that and outside of your business.
Yeah, I think that part of it comes from, anytime you're trying to build a relationship with anyone, it could have just started out, he could have been a silent investor. But I've been very diligent over the years to always provide monthly updates about my company, what's going on, places that I need help with, or things that I could help with. And I think it's shown a certain level of diligence and reliability over the years. And I think if you can do that in any relationship, good things will often come from it. So whether it's a Mark Cuban or just someone you're trying to form a business partnership or a client you're trying to acquire, is look more at the long-term relationship than short-term wins.
So I know I only have you for finite period of time. So I'll get to my last closing question I ask all my guests, which I'm going to have to twist for you. As most people know, I typically ask what the best thing about being a parent is, but I know you don't have kids or don't have kids yet.
Yeah.
So my closing question for you, Shaan, would be, what is the best thing about being an entrepreneur?
Oh, great question. The best thing about being an entrepreneur, I think, is freedom. And, I went through medical school, residency, and I was always in like a large hospital system with a lot of bosses and bureaucracy. And being an entrepreneur is like the total opposite of that, which is you don't have a boss, you don't have a bureaucracy, at least if you're in a startup like myself. And I love being able to control my own time. Now, that doesn't mean it's easy. I have to work hard. I have to manage my own schedules. It's oftentimes a lot harder. But having the freedom to not have to worry about any of that is really, really nice. Now, you have other worries, of course. You have to make sure you're providing for your employees, you're developing good company culture, all kinds of stuff. But the freedom at the end of the day, I wouldn't trade for anything. And that's why, to your question earlier on why did you choose more entrepreneurship than doctor, I think that's it. I don't think I could ever go back to working in a hospital. I like the telederm thing because I'm just a 1099 for a company and I just show up and I see patients, but I don't have to answer to a boss, which is really important for me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Being an entrepreneur now for, well, about 14 years, I would say the same thing. I couldn't agree with you more. And sometimes people will joke about, well, how's your boss doing today? I'm like, yeah, he's having a really bad day. And it's just funny, like, oh, he's been a real jerk today. And it gets a few chuckles. But I found your story to be very inspiring, and hopefully it would potentially inspire some other future entrepreneurs that maybe are out there on the sidelines. And I can't thank you enough for the conversation. Shaan, we'll put show notes in our links in our show notes to Prep Expert. But where is that the best place for people to find you? I know you also do LinkedIn, which we can include as well. But I want to make sure we point the audience to the right spot for you, because I know there's a lot of parents, like I said, that listen to this show. They're geared towards them. And so they will probably be interested in, okay, what is this tax, or I keep saying tax because I just finished tax season, test prep expert.
Yeah, so we don't offer tax courses yet, but in the future maybe. No, but for parents who do have students in high school or who are going to be in high school soon, you can find all of my stuff at prepexpert.com. You can see all of our schedules for SAT online courses, ACT courses, one-on-one tutoring, college admissions consulting. So that's prepexpert.com. If you want to connect with me outside of that, I'm on all of the major social media platforms. It's usually just my name at Shaan, spelled a little differently though, ShaanPatel. And for any listeners who enjoyed the entrepreneurship aspect of today's conversation, I do have a book geared just for you, which is called Self-Made Success, 48 Secret Strategies to Live Happier, Healthier, and Wealthier. That's been really popular among those who enjoy kind of what I talk about related to entrepreneurship, wealth, and success. And so that's Self-Made Success. You can find it on Amazon.
Okay.
So a few ways to find me.
Well, I'll put a link into that in the show notes too, because I know I get questions about that often. But Shaan, I can't thank you for taking the time to have a conversation with us today. I know a lot of parents will have some answers figured out, I think, from this conversation. So I can't thank you enough, and look forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, Paul, this was great. Thanks for having me on. Hope to do it again soon.
We've had a lot of conversations about college planning and prep over the spring here on the show. And one of the reasons why is that the stakes for college have never been higher. Getting that right fit, like I talked with Heidi King about earlier this year, is really critical. And one of the things we talked about was this whole test optional, and how test optional is good in some ways, but it also is bad in others. And for those that are trying to really stand out from the crowd, having a strong test score, ACT, SAT, and full disclosure, I was not a good test taker. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation with Shaan. And a few of the key things I took away from our conversation is that just like in financial planning, test preparation, you got to start with a clear why. Like, why is this important to you? Is it, being motivated enough to get into a higher level school? Is it motivation to earn more scholarship money? It could be very different things. But just like when I start with financial planning and talk about, hey, what's the purpose of this? What are our supporting objectives? College planning is no different. Test prep is no different. The other thing I want to mention is I think Shaan's company is unique in that they really focused on in-person learning. There's a lot of self-paced courses out there. God only knows, I took a lot of them when I was studying for the CFA, the CFP. But when it comes to test prep, ACT, SAT, I think Shaan has really found something here where there is value in live learning and not just a self-paced. And I think having a group and having been through one of these before with some of my financial designations I've achieved, being in that group setting is really powerful because it allows you to be able to feed off another, be there to be able to help and support one another. And it's not just about the learning. It's a camaraderie, if you will. So that's all we have for this week, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Now that you've made it to the end of another great conversation, are you looking for more? If so, head over to tamacapital.com, where you will find all of our conversations. Use the search feature to find the topic or guest you would love to learn more about. Also, don't forget to make someone else's day by sharing our show. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.